네, 반갑습니다.
Good morning. As introduced, I am Jin Gyoo-Ho, Vice President of Management of the Busan Port Authority, BPA. I am grateful for this opportunity to speak to numerous experts about the green port policy of the BPA at this huge forum. It is a great honor, and I would like to thank the organizers and the 24 members of the planning committee and all the staff for putting together this event. I would like to first start with a brief introduction of the Busan Port and move on to the BPA Green Port Policy. So this is the BPA. BPA was enacted in 2004 in January based on the Busan Port Authority Act. We have 3 HQs, 2 business units, 260 employees with an annual budget of 1.2 trillion won, mostly in new construction of new ports, reconstruction, and hinterland development. This is the role of the BPA, as mentioned before. Our roles include Busan Port construction, operation, and management, redevelopment of aging ports, and the development and operation of the Free Trade Zone hinterland logistics complex. So our mission is to contribute to the national economy by fostering Busan Port as a competitive hub for shipping, port, and logistics. So this is the current status of Busan Port. Last year, as of end of 2021, Busan handled 22,706 KTEUs of containers. That's the 7th largest in the world. And we were the number 2 in the world in terms of transshipment container throughput with 12,273 KTEU. 30 million TEU are handled globally, domestically, and 75% of that is handled through Busan. So it is the Korea's #1 port, and it was global number 2 in transshipment after Singapore. And this is just a chart showing our global status. And this is the port facility status. As you can see, there is the North Port, New Port, Kamcheon Port, and Daerepo Port that is a part of Busan Port. So the North Port is quite old, and it is the major regional hub connecting to China, Southeast Asia, and Japan. The New Port is the main transshipment hub for global shipping companies. 95% of all cargo are containers. New Port handles 70% of that, and North Port about 30% of that. And Kamcheon Port mostly handles bulk cargo. And next, I would like to go into the green port activities by the BPA. So the speakers before me have already mentioned this, so let me skip this slide. And in step with the global trend, domestically, we have enacted a special act. And accordingly, we have set up a comprehensive plan, and different relevant organizations are implementing the plan. And accordingly, the BPA also set up the Busan Green Port Policy. The BPA in 2019, in order for the sustainable coexistence and development of Busan Port and local communities as the vision, we set out the target to achieve 70% reduction in PM emissions from Busan Port by 2025. So divided into different sources of pollution, we have the 4 major areas: ship sector, unloading equipment, green energy, and other environment-related tasks. If you look at the performance, as of compared to 2018, in 2020, PM 2.5 emissions from Busan Port was reduced by 45%, which is 2 years ahead of our plan. Let me start with the vessel. We are installing an alternative maritime power facilities, or AMP. For low pressure AMP, we have 78 of them. And high pressure AMP, 2 new port areas and 2 north port areas in 8 berths. 20 SPOs have been fully installed. Right now, they are not being fully utilized yet as of now, and in order to bolster the use of AMP, we are offering discounts for entry and exit fees or providing other incentives. This is the port guide ship that we own. We are shifting from diesel to electric propulsion system for these ships. Early next year, we are looking at completing the construction. We have invested 1.1 billion won, and this is the very first ship of this kind in Korea. The government is pursuing carbon neutrality policies, and the 140 government ships owned by the MOF and 40 other ships will be fully, by 2040, shifted to a zero-emission fuel. We also have the operation of low-speed navigation area, about 20 nautical miles from port. Ships that operate low speed below 12 knots, we offer a discount on entry and exit fees. Maybe many global shipping companies use the port and they receive the incentives, and the port plans to expand the incentives in the future. This slide is the LNG bunkering facility. Since 2019, we have started this plan. We do not yet have an actual on-site project yet, but with the new port construction master plan and the 4th National Port Basic Plan, we do have this as part of those plans. So the BPA has conducted a feasibility study and also the co-gas as well. But in our view, the fuel supplied to the ships, it's very unpredictable whether the main fuel will be ammonia, hydrogen, or LNG. So we do think that we need to wait and see and look at where the trend is going, and then consult with the relevant government organizations to either build an LNG bunkering facility or a combination of different fuels. And next is the cargo handling equipment. We're done with the vessel part. There are yard cranes and yard tractors that fill up our ports. So starting with the yard tractors, we have 684 yard tractors on port, mostly diesel fueled, and we want to shift them to LNG. About 66% is complete, and this year 50 more units have been converted to LNG. And by 2025, our plan is to complete this switch with the BPA and government, each taking up 25% of the bill. The private sector takes up the rest, 50% of the project cost. Let me remove my facial mask. My apologies. Next. There are those yard tractors with less than 5 years remaining in their life cycle. So it is difficult to switch those vehicles to LNG. So we instead attach a DPF, diesel particulate filter, to reduce emissions, and this will also be completed by 2025. Next, of using electric powered yard cranes. Next to the crane, there's the yard tractor that works right side by side with the crane, and we want to develop a unmanned charging station for our MGC, but we need the technology to further develop to shorten the charging time or to enable the tractors to operate for longer hours after full charge. This is the yard crane, and there's the transfer crane and yard crane. And for the new port, all the cranes have been switched to electricity. But for the North Port, out of 121 units, 85 have been converted to pollution-free electric cranes. And the rest will be completely converted by 2025. As mentioned before, for TCs, transfer cranes, for some of the cranes that have only a few years remaining in their life cycle, we will attach DPF. This slide is about shuttle carriers. So Busan Port does not have many shuttle carriers, but they are transferring containers on the yard, and they are diesel-based. But we are switching to an LNG hybrid shuttle carrier, just like a hybrid vehicle. So the electric batteries are charged and used on these carriers. Next is green energy. Out of the projects we carry out, there is the hinterland logistics complex development in the free trade zone. 850,000 square meters will be developed by 2030 and rented out to private companies. 50% of the project is complete, and this area is being provided to companies in Korea. About 3,000 jobs have been created. About 2 million TEU of cargo is being handled here. So in short, this is a logistics center. And using the rooftop of the buildings, we want to develop and install PV facilities to reduce GHG emissions and also to power the logistics center. And some of that revenue will be used to provide support for the underprivileged class to give back to society. And this is about using seawater heat for cooling and heating. Seawater in the winter is 5 to 10 in the summer is 5 to 10 degrees cooler than air and 5 to 8 degrees warmer in winter, and we want to use this temperature difference to power cooling and heating. And this is actually in use. We can save 25% of fuel cost and reduce emissions by about half. And going forward, well, hydrogen-powered trucks are not yet commercialized. But in preparation for hydrogen vehicles, we are going to install at the Newport and Northport hydrogen refueling stations. And for other port area environmental tasks, port emits lots of PMs, so we use suction vehicle or sprinkler vehicles to sweep the area along with other relevant organizations. And I'm not sure if you can see this slide, but around the port there are red dots indicated on the map. These indicate the locations of PM measurement stations. So we have PM monitoring systems that give a traffic light signal to indicate the level of PM. We had 4, but we have now installed 21 or 25 of these stations to give information to our workers and citizens. Any information collected will be built into a big data database for use in future policy development. And there are many office buildings in the port terminals, and there are many cooling and heating stations there. And we want to use a low NOx burner. The burners have actually been fully replaced with low NOx burners that has led to 84% reduction in NOx emissions. Next is plastic resource circulation. We have an IoT recycling separator, about 4 of them in the coastal passenger terminal, international passenger terminal, and so port offices. So plastics are recycled and upcycled into different products that are then distributed to the underprivileged class. And for passenger ships that come to call to port, we can have plans to install IoT recycling separators as there as well. And finally, for 3 years, on the left, you see sodium light bulbs. There are many of these towers, and because the port operates 24/7, there are 4,200 of these light towers across the port, and over 3 years, we are fully replacing these bulbs with LED light bulbs. This will be completed by the end of this year. The operating companies can save cost, reduce emissions, and also for the workers. It is better for the safety of the workers. So that was a short introduction to the Green Port Policy of BPA. The eco-friendly policies are a stepping stone towards our path to carbon neutrality. In the process of operating ports, how we can reduce GHG emissions is really where we are looking at to achieve in this policy. And in May, at the IEA, I read that different nations, 196 nations around the world, even if they were to fully achieve carbon neutrality goals, the carbon emissions will still remain at about 2.2 billion tons. So by 2100, the temperature of the Earth will rise by 2.1 degrees. And I think this is really an urgent call for a major innovation around the world and a participation to reduce emissions. And last year at the MOF, the carbon neutrality roadmap was presented along with the vision to as carbon negative by 2050 in the ocean sector. So going beyond carbon neutrality, we want to reach carbon negative. And there are 5 tasks presented, including the port area. And starting in May this year, along with the government, we are building a comprehensive plan for carbon neutrality. Unfortunately, in the port sector, carbon emission measurement criteria is not yet in existence. So we want to develop such criteria and set a target so that by 2050, we can achieve carbon neutrality with the cooperation of relevant organizations. The Busan Port, I hope, will lead the way in global ports for carbon neutrality. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.